Today I have the pleasure to film one of the coolest sports cars you can get, the 2007 Aston Martin Vantage. This is an entry-level supercar that has an amazing V8 and looks so good. I'm going to go over all of the cool features and we're even going to take it for a drive. Sounds so good. Now, of course, this is synonymous with the famous James Bond, but this is actually one of the best looking sports cars of all time. I really think it just embodies the nature of what an Aston Martin is and looks so classic. Of course, in the front, you have a couple cool design features. The Aston Martin grille, which is very iconic and carried over to the cars today. And you also have some cool features. If you look closely in the headlights, you have these sort of streaks that almost look like diamonds just coming down and making the car look a little bit more unique. Looking at the front hood of the car, you have some just body lines that do a really good job at bringing a little aggression through and lead to some venting that looks really nice and also functions for the V8 to breathe a little bit. Coming down the side of the car, you notice a couple different things. First, this vent right here looks really beautiful, and it's just a subtle detail that Aston does so well. And this actually follows the entire line of the car to give it a distinct body line that really sets the side of this car up very differently to a lot of other cars. This car is not necessarily about rage and aggression, but more so classic lines that just look simply beautiful. I think a good word to describe this car would be timeless. This is coming up on 20 years old, but it absolutely would not look 20 years old to the average person. Something I really like, coming in a little bit closer, are the doors. The door handle is unique, but beyond that, the door actually opens upward. And this is to help the car door not hit any curbs and stuff like that. But I do think it's just a little cool feature that Aston has done throughout their entire history. When the V8 Vantage came out, it was initially poised to be a 911 competitor, but it offered a few things that were just really different. First off, you had a V8 rather than a 6-cylinder, and this V8, I can attest, sounds so good. And you also had a driving experience that was just quite a lot different. I think the side view of this car and the rear 3/4 panel view is one of the best. First, you have this sort of window line, which just looks so elegant, especially in this specific car. The black next to the sort of chrome trim really looks nice. And you also have these rear fenders that are just so far out, and pictures and video don't really do it justice, but it just looks so wide from the back. I think it's an amazing look. Coming to the rear of the car, you have a couple different things which I think look really, really good. First is the sloping roofline. This car just has all the right proportions and looks really, really elegant. And you also have this little lip on the back of the car, which again is just a small little thing, which makes the car look a little bit sporty and blends in really nicely. One interesting thing is the way that these tail lights work. You actually have some body color section right here, and the tail lights sort of blend into the rear bumper, which I think looks really nice. This car has a dual exhaust tip to let that V8 sing, and you even have a little view of a diffuser right there, which again just looks really, really nice and makes the car look more sporty. One of the best things about these cars is its sound and its amazing engine. This has a 4.3 liter V8, naturally aspirated, and makes an amazing sound. Similar to Mercedes, they actually have a plaque that points out exactly who built the engine, which I just think makes it a little bit more special. The engine itself has 380 horsepower and around 300 pound-feet of torque, which I think make this car a really nice driver. You know, it's not some crazy amount of horsepower, but it's plenty to have a lot of fun. Stepping in to the inside of this vehicle, you're greeted with a really nice quality cabin. Sitting in the Vantage is a really nice place to be. You notice a couple things right off the bat. First, the dials. The dials are not like normal cars. They actually go sort of backwards, and they remind me a little bit of jewelry. But this car is all about being special, classy, elegant, and I think the tack and the gauges look really nice. Of course, you have the Aston Martin badge and a nice little ring around, which looks really good. You have an interesting looking sort of, 6-speed manual here that almost looks like a little piece of glass on the top, which I think looks really nice. And all the buttons, the quality, the feel of the car is pretty good overall. This car did share some parts with Ford and Volvo, so some of that is sort of a little bit strange. Being almost a 20-year-old car, you have some technology that is a bit outdated. Here you have your radio controls, and actually this screen right here pops up, but most people don't actually even use it since it's such an outdated infotainment system. While this is a classy, elegant sports car, it also has a lot of practicality. If you come into the back, it has this little button right here, which reminds me of, again, jewelry. And if you press it, you can just open up the back where you can see that you can actually fit quite a lot in here. I think you'd have no problem taking this on a weekend road trip or even a week-long road trip. Yeah, thanks so much for letting me drive your car. It definitely is interesting right off the bat. It's actually sort of like easier to drive than I thought.
And it's actually a wider and bigger car than it looks like from the outside. So it takes some getting used to, and the clutch and the throttle are both a little unique.
Yeah.
But once you get the hang of it, it's really quite nice.
The brakes feel pretty good.
The brakes are very good, especially because it's a heavier car, 3,600 pounds.
Yeah. It's a much firmer brake than I think a lot of sports cars that are kind of like wishy-washy. Even at 3,000 RPM, it sounds really good.
Yeah. You really got to get it up above the
for sure
4,000. That's where the valve opens. So, and I don't have I don't have the modification done for the valve.
Ah,
so,
okay.
Yeah. It's really going to howl when you get it above 4,000.
But just driving it around normally, it really is sort of pretty comfortable.
Oh, it's great. I've taken this thing for hours long trips, and there's no issues whatsoever.
Like there's some cars where it really wears on your body, and there's like a lot of you kind of want to get it out of driving it after a couple hours. But this is super more or less easy to drive.
I think it's kind of what happens when a grand touring car company makes a sports car, right?
Yeah.
They can't get rid of the DNA of it being livable.
Actually, the visibility is really good too. It's not on some, for example, the Huracan, you have such a slanted rake.
Yeah.
This is not too bad, and it's really easy. You have a huge window in the back. The mirrors are in the perfect position. I wouldn't say it's really hard to see out or anything like that. It's also really quiet on the inside.
Yeah.
There's almost, there's no weird rattles or anything like that, which I feel like you get so often in older cars.
Yeah. I think, when you look at the interior of this car, it's leather, it's metal.
Yeah.
Even the hard plastic is some sort of nice polymer, higher quality plastic, and it was clearly put together with care. I think
for sure.
People think, oh, hand-built, British, you're not expecting necessarily a build quality, but these cars, for whatever reason, they're just really well done.
And then, so what are the main differences with the newer generation, like the 2013s? Is it just a larger engine?
Yep. So in 2009, they did a full refresh of this car.
Okay.
They upped the engine from a 4.3 to a 4.7 liter. The automatic cars got a big transmission upgrade from Sport Shift 1 to Sport Shift 2, but I think that the manual cars were mostly left in the same way transmission-wise. I've heard different people say that there was a new clutch. I'm not sold on the fact that there was one. I've driven that car. I actually considered buying one. Yeah. And then, of course, the price. But they make quite a bit more torque. They make 40 more power. They look a little bit more modern.
Yeah.
And they do also have the crystal key, which is very desirable.
Sure.
So, those are some of the appealing things about those cars. And I would love to own one, honestly. Yeah. But this car kind of does it all. It's the original it holds its place well. So.
It does have a very firm, when you do go over those little dividers, it's actually pretty firm, the suspension.
Yeah.
It's both compliant when you're just going on the road, but when you hit something, it is pretty firm.
Yeah. It rebounds nicely, and it keeps the tires on the ground for sure. So.
Yeah. I feel like for this price point, there's just you get so much car. Like you get this does not look almost 20 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a pretty timeless design, especially if you look at what was happening during this era with like the Bengal butt BMWs.
Yep.
Mercedes was not putting out anything very good looking at that time either. So kind of the stars of the show in terms of style for the past 50 years were not up to snuff at that time. And I think that Aston looked back at their older cars rather than what was currently happening when they designed this, and it shows I like a car that has a snappy throttle response, and this car does not.
Yeah, it's a little like sluggish almost down low.
Yeah, and I think they did that for like because again they're a grand touring car company, right? But also at the time they really over catalytic converted this motor because I think that they had a trouble making it meet emissions requirements with the new heads that they put on, etc. And so it's very, very suffocated.
Sure.
And then you combine that with the fact that it has an unnecessarily heavy flywheel, probably straight from the DB9, and a clutch that is also a little heavier than it probably needs to be.
Yeah.
And you get kind of this slower revving luxury car feel down low, which completely goes away, by the way, once it's spinning, once you're above 4,000 RPM.
Actual pull away is very smooth. There's no like shuddering or shaking or anything like that, which you get on some cars.
Yeah.
Even like the S2000, I would say is a much more like delicate experience when you're pulling away. You can get it wrong really easily.
Yeah.
But with this, I feel like, I mean, assuming you don't stall it, it's a super smooth pull away. Get on it a little in a second. Once it straightens out. That's for sure. It sounds really good when you're on it. And you're totally right. Under load, it's totally different.
Yeah.
That's a really smooth pull away. It sounds so good. It's really like a musical sound.
This guy.
Don't want to get in front of
The universe doesn't want you to have any fun. It's funny because when I'm in the driver's seat, I can't feel the torque the same way. I have this new appreciation for
one more little pull. Just sounds so good. Just like the grunt. Yeah, that's third gear at like 3,000 RPM, and you just have
half throttle maybe.
Yeah, no, not even close to full throttle. You just have a lot of torque. Yeah, this is a car I feel like is really a nice grand tourer. This car is really just one of the best value sports cars that you can get. I think it competes with many, many cars in this price range and really does an amazing job.